So a number of weeks ago, I took a trip back to my hometown to visit family for the holidays. Now in the past, when I've done these type of trips, I always loaded up a fully kitted out camera backpack for all the just in case scenarios I thought I might run across. We're talking multiple bodies, almost every lens that I own, flashes and triggers, you name it. What would always end up happening is that I would maybe grab and use one camera during my time there and one, maybe two focal lengths the entire time. More than often, I wouldn't even end up using the flash, but I thought it was better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. But overall, what that would amount to is that out of two cameras and six lenses or so, I would only use one camera and two lenses at most. All of that to say that this time I thought I would wise up and lighten my kit to bring only what I would need. I knew I would be in a mix of dimly lit indoor environments as well as brightly lit outdoor scenes, but thought that the cleanest of images wasn't the most important thing when simply capturing the family moments. So I knew I wanted to bring my Ricoh GR3. After all, it is the lightest and most compact camera setup I own. There were just too many times that I would head out with a bag of gear and end up not using any of it because it was either too much of a hassle or just overkill for the situation or the moment. Now, I almost defaulted to my Fuji X100F. You all know how much I love that camera. However, sometimes I find myself walking around with that slinged and still not using it. And the X100 is big enough that it has a tendency to swing around when on a strap and can still be something that gets in the way or that you have to worry about so that you can avoid banging it into things when bending down, for instance. In comparison, the GR will fit into almost any pocket that I'd ever wear, so it has the ability to be worn securely and discreetly. So in my mind, the Ricoh GR, even if it didn't solve my problem of not pulling my camera out when I should have, would at least not be a burden to carry, even if I didn't use it. And yet still, I just couldn't bring myself to only bring one camera on the trip. What if I needed fast autofocus, or a longer reach, or I wanted to shoot a more traditional portrait? The 28mm field of view just might not suit every situation. So I compromised and brought my Sony A9 along with the Sony Zeiss 55mm 1.8 lens. I thought it was a nice trade-off to have class-leading autofocus, silent shooting, and better light gathering if I needed it in a relatively compact package. Now, importantly, I fit all of this as well as extra batteries, accessories, a Steam Deck, noise-canceling headphones, and one of my favorite bags ever, this super slim backpack from Chrome Industries. Now, a quick aside on this bag. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure they discontinued this bag, but if you want to try and find it, it's called the Chrome Industries MXD Fathom backpack. It's basically the size of a vest or a camelback or something like that, with two compartments on the front. One of them is soft lined and the other has a cargo net compartment and integrated keyring. The main compartment has a slim divider and it seems like it's designed to fit notebooks, maybe a tablet or a small laptop. I just love that I can fit a full frame camera, a lens, flash, a bunch of other items in a bag that takes up a smaller horizontal footprint than a small sling bag on my back. Now granted, I do have to separate the body and the lens, but this is perfectly fine for while in transit. Overall, the slimness of this bag makes moving through crowds and tight places much easier. And if you are worried about theft, you can wear it on the front to keep your eyes on the zippers, at the expense of looking like you have some body armor on, or maybe even a bomb vest. So wear this at your own risk. Anyways, absolutely love this bag, and another reason for that coming up later. Now back to the traveling kit. So with this new lightweight setup in tow, I loaded this bag up along with the rest of our luggage, and we drove back to our hometown. And this is where I had sort of a revelation. To be honest, I have been neglecting my GR3. As much as I love it, it has not been getting much love in the past few months since I've been enjoying other nostalgic cameras I've picked up along the way. As such, I took the opportunity to try and refamiliarize myself with the controls and features of the GR3 from the passenger seat as my wife drove around. I spent time dialing in my snap focus and custom budding settings, snapping photos out of the window as we drove around. There was a decent amount of things to explore, both old and new, as Ricoh has issued a few major updates to the GR3 firmware that brought some new options. Now, this has been a pleasant surprise. Fujifilm was famously known for their Kaizen firmware update approach, where they would breathe new life into older bodies. However, it feels like they have mostly abandoned this approach, and Ricoh seems to be filling that void here, at least with the GR series. But anyways, along the way we made a few stops, and I would hop out and just snap a few photos with the GR while waiting on bathroom breaks and whatnot. I started to realize how much I'd missed the GR in these moments as I would review the test photos and use the in-camera development to play with different treatments of my raw files in camera. Needless to say, so far I was optimistically happy about my decision to bring the GR3 and leave the entire bag of gear at home, which I wouldn't have been using while en route because it's just too much of a hassle. It usually goes in the trunk. The next day, after we arrived at our destination, I didn't really take too many photos during the day, but we went to a holiday light show at night where I was eager to try and push the GR to its limits, bouncing between relying on IBIS and pushing up to the higher ISOs to see what I could capture. I ended up with a few photos that I did enjoy and was overall pleased with how it performed, outside of the battery life. But it was super cold and I didn't bring any extras when we went to the light show, so it was understandable. In the end, with some careful planning of turning it on and off when I needed it, it made it through the end of the night. The next day was a little more eventful. We took the kids ice skating, so I decided it was time to take advantage of my tiny backpack and bring both cameras to capture the moments. While there, I kept my GR either in hand or in my front flannel pocket for grabbing quick moments. I did end up pulling the A9 out to capture some moving shots and some more isolated candid portraits, and it worked fantastically for that. But once I felt like I had kind of captured what I needed, I decided to repack the A9 back into the bag and take the GR for a quick walk around the block for some street photography. Now, I didn't have much time to explore by myself here, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but walking around with this camera in this bag was extremely liberating. I knew I wasn't going to pull the A9 out, so it was basically like just going out with one camera, one focal length, and challenging yourself to stay within that limitation as you explore the city. Now, this is by no means a unique revelation, as I'm sure most street photographers operate this way anyways. But for me, as someone who used to shoot portraits and weddings, that itch to be prepared all the time has always had me bringing more than I really needed to accomplish the job, just in case. Letting go of that and embracing this little point and shoot really put me in a different frame of mind. The camera is so small in my big hands that it's likely hard to notice I even have it as I walk around, which affords me a little bit more freedom in moving around. Now, I wouldn't say I captured any of my favorite photos ever on this short walk, but the experience was extremely enjoyable. I'm sure I would have had a similar experience with my X100. However, one of my favorite features of the X100 is the optical viewfinder. So I tend to always use and gravitate towards that when I have the camera. With that not being an option with the bare GR, it forces you to use the back LCD, which doubles in functionality by not making you look as serious as you would when aiming through a viewfinder, and also giving you the freedom to discreetly get interesting angles and change perspectives by simply extending your arm with this one-handed operation. This gives off the ultimate tourist look, and I find people don't tend to mind you taking pictures in their direction as much. Of course, that's not 100% the camera, but also about how you carry yourself. But regardless, there was something about just using this camera, both for the family moments and street, that just provided the ultimate level of functionality. No romanticism here. The GR just bangs at what it's good at. So after this trip, when I got home and I reviewed what I captured, the way I was able to capture these images in the most unobtrusive way really stuck out in my mind. It was absolutely no burden to me at all. I've alluded to this a few times already, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with that feeling of bringing camera gear with you, having to mind it and be careful with it, and then not even really using it to capture much. Making it feel like you taking the time to bring it was an inconvenient waste of time. The GR3 was the exact opposite of that. Even if I didn't capture a single photo, having this camera body on me was of absolutely no consequence to me at all. Sometimes I'll bring a camera in order to feel like I didn't inconvenience myself for nothing. I'll force myself to take shots that I don't really believe in. And every single time I've done that, the images were just trash. Type of images that you don't even end up importing. And I don't want to do that. If I'm not feeling inspired or bothered to take a photo, I'd rather not. I'd rather just enjoy the moment, or at the very least, save my hard drive space. So I got home after this trip, and I just stared at the X100F. The itch to sell this beloved camera once again arose. And as much as I love the GR3, there were times on that trip that I wish I had a 35mm field of view. So I checked the used prices for the X100F, and I realized that, thanks to the current hype, I could sell my X100F and buy a used GR3X for the same or slightly less than what a used X100F went for. It was a tough decision to make, but I had to be real with myself. After this experience, could the X100F offer what the GR3 just gave me with regards to unobtrusive carry and shooting? And for me, that answer was no. And if I wanted that viewfinder experience, optical or electronic, I have other cameras such as the Leica M8, the X Pro 1, the Canon 5D, the A7C. All of these could give me that different experience. So the decision was pretty much set. I went and hunted for a used GR3X, and luckily I found an urban edition one at a great price. The dark gray body would easily allow me to distinguish it from my black GR3 when I quickly needed to grab one. So I boxed the X100F up, and off to MPB it went. The urban GR3X came in right after I shipped the X100F, so there was no time for comparison images, but it was beautiful. At last, I had the most compact 1-2 punch possible. To be honest, I've kind of lusted after this combination as soon as Ricoh announced the 40mm field of view GR3X. Walking around with one in each pocket sounded like a dream, and soon I would have the opportunity to do so, since I had a trip to San Antonio and Austin planned for mid-January. So let's fast forward to that and review how that went. So to keep things short, using these cameras together was a great experience. When I traveled to Texas, I brought a carry-on suitcase for clothes and the same Chrome Industries backpack for my tech gear: cameras, chargers, Steam Deck, battery banks, headphones, etc. Now, the thing that makes this bag great as a second carry-on is that it's so slim that I can slide it underneath the seat in front of me and still have plenty of room for my size 14 feet. Now, my homeboy to travel with me, he had some comfort issues since his second carry-on was a full-size backpack stuffed to the brim, leaving him no space for his feet, which are much smaller than mine, by the way. While there, I often didn't bring a bag at all when we went out into the cities. Most often, I'd either wear cargo pants that I could stow one or both cameras in, or flannel with front pockets that could hold the cameras if I needed to go hands-free. Even when I wore non-cargo pants and a hoodie, I would just bring the GR and slide it into my front pants pocket and nobody even knew I had it. The entire time, this setup was so out of the way, it allowed me to just enjoy times with friends and pull the cameras out to capture a quick moment when it made sense. When I got home and shared the photo gallery back to my friends, they just kept remarking about how I was able to capture all these moments without them even realizing I was taking pictures. I won't share any of the photos of them here, but just trust me, it was perfect. Outside of the candid moments, while we walked through the city in transit from one place to another, I would also pull the cameras out to grab some snapshots and a little bit of street. This is also where these cameras shine. Since the GR3X was new for me, I mostly used that, but I would pull out the GR3 when I wanted a different frame that wasn't possible with the 3X. I always only use one camera at a time, slip one into my pocket and take the other out, and the combination of the two was simply perfect for my needs. They really allowed me to strike that balance I'm always seeking, being able to enjoy the trip and all the moments, but also capture it in high photographic quality. Oftentimes, I feel like we as photographers have to sacrifice one for the other when trying to capture our personal lives, particularly on vacations not centered around photography. So in the end, what is my point? I don't have an overwhelming point here, and I don't want to title this video something clickbaity like, here's why I sold the X100, but I probably will. But I just wanted to share my experience. At the end of the day, we all have our own ever-changing personal preferences, use cases, and needs. So there's never a one-size-fits-all. However, a lot of us go through similar experiences, so maybe sharing mine would help others with similar needs who are in the midst of reevaluating their priorities, needs, and preferences. In that regard, I hope my little story was helpful for someone, and hopefully you enjoyed some of the snapshots from my trips. And as always, I appreciate you for watching to this point, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace. Okay, so if you are still here at this point in the video, you've now unlocked some bonus time. Congratulations. So exactly 1 month after this Texas trip, I actually took the Ricoh GR3 and the GR3X with me to a Maggie Rogers concert with my wife for Valentine's Day. So I will just flash a few of my selects from that up here on the screen at this time. I've never actually been to a concert before, and I've never even tried my hand at concert photography. Now, clearly these two cameras are not really well suited for that given the focal lengths, unless you are front row or in the photographer's pit, of course. But even from a decent distance, the 40mm on the GR3X was actually able to pull off some pretty decent shots at some pretty slow shutter speeds, which gave me some pretty high quality frames that I could actually crop into and get some decent shots from. So I'll flash those up on the screen now, and hopefully you enjoy those as well. Nothing crazy it adds to this particular story here, but it's just a continuation of how versatile and how flexible these cameras are, considering they both fit into my front pants pocket, and I pulled them out when I needed them, and when I wanted to enjoy the time there with my wife, I put them away, and it was like I didn't have a camera at all. So super unobtrusive. I also brought the Leica M8 with me on this particular trip, although I didn't take it to this concert, and that was super fun shooting on the streets. Honestly, that could be a whole video onto itself. It probably will be in the future because I absolutely love shooting that camera, especially out in the streets. So but anyways, hopefully you enjoy these photos. I'm off real now. Peace.